critique and the criticism of mainstream media is really at the monolith of the mainstream media itself, not necessarily directed toward the people inside of it. Correct? I mean,
correct.
Because for instance, there were 115 journalists killed last year just doing their jobs. I mean, these are not
many of them were independent journalists, by the way. This film is kind of a celebration of independent journalists. It's certainly not saying anyone who's working for, a commercial, corporate-owned news agency is a bad person. Of course not. I worked for years for ABC News and NBC News, and as I said, I've shown the film to people who currently work for the New York Times and that kind of thing, and they get it. I mean, it's not meant as an attack on them. If anything, it might give them a little more ammunition to insist that their editor let them work on good stories instead of things they think, maybe softball stories or fluff pieces.
The difficulty with that is, I mean, you've got an industry that has lost, thousands and thousands of jobs. I think some of the estimates are up to almost 40% of newspaper jobs are just gone since 2007. Only slightly offset by the rise in digital only journalism, but even still, this is an industry in serious decline, and most of the people who have been eliminated from news organizations have been the people who are the most highly paid, and the people who've put in 20 years who take all of that experience and knowledge, institutional knowledge, with them when they go, and they're replaced by journalism students who who are all very well intentioned, but all very green and don't have the experience, and then add on top of that the pressures of that digital puts upon reporters, and they're doing basically two and a half times what a reporter used to do.
Oh, I know. And investigative journalism, which, as we all know, is the most time and money intensive, because time is money. And the long-term investigative projects, which some newspapers used to do, those are some of the first positions to go with cost cutting, because they just can't afford to do that kind of journalism.
They just don't make any money. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, by not, the bottom line is what should journalists and what should journalism be doing? One of the things it should be doing is investigating governments, because people need to know what their governments are doing, and they need journalists to tell them that, because the public doesn't have the time to, everybody can't go down with a notebook and start digging into records and files and following money trails and investigating and reporting critically on what their governments are doing at all levels, local, state, provincial, federal. So what's the answer? I mean, we need that kind of journalism. That's the only thing I know. And yes, there are tectonic shifts going on in the newspaper world and in the TV network world that are like everything is in flux. And I think we just have to put our money down, sometimes literally, by supporting institutions that are doing independent investigative journalism, and in some cases depending on donations, such as Democracy Now!, which is a great daily show that executive produced by Amy Goodman and hosted by Amy Goodman, and is a forum for some of the very best independent investigative journalists to come on and talk about their latest long-term projects. People like Jeremy Scahill, Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, and many, many other outstanding investigative journalists that Amy provides a forum for them to come on and you won't see them on CNN, these people,
right?
Or CBS, but Amy Goodman, Democracy Now!, you can Google it. They've got a great website. You can watch the show online. It's a daily hour digest of what's going on in the world and in the U.S. and other countries. The coverage of Canada where I live is pretty good actually. But that show depends on donations. There are other organizations like ProPublica, the Nation Institute. They all depend on donations, and I think that that's one way of supporting journalists carrying on in the tradition of I.F. Stone.
Yeah, because clearly the other models are the commercial models, the advertising models that most of journalism has been based on is lacking at best, and really, if you're honest about it, it's just plain failing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not suggesting. I don't think I.F. Stone would have suggested that people don't read the New York Times or don't read or don't watch CNN. I mean, I do. I access those to see what they can tell me, but I supplement that with other sources of journalism that if you start doing that, you will start to see that you're getting stories told from a different perspective, but nevertheless, solid journalism and not just sort of solid opinion. Solid journalism, but from a different point of view than you're seeing in the New York Times or on CNN.